Okay, thanks. I guess that ties in with the question that came from Jeremy, who's actually here at the conference. And he says, isn't the divide a natural divide between adults and kids? So what you have is a kind of prefabricated or a fabricated divide. It's not so much a digital divide, since so many adults are now much more engaged with technology. So isn't it just the kind of lifelong kids and adults divide that's always been around in one form or another, and rebellion and, you know, these kind of concepts?
Well, there always has been a generational divide. I have always thought, and I continue to think, that this is different. Partially because the arrival of digital technology is really I call it a discontinuity or a singularity. It's something that hasn't happened before. Mm-hmm. And that therefore we have a younger generation who knows something, as we just spoke about before, about something really important in the world. Not just they know about toys or music or rock and roll, but they know about something really important in the world, and they know it in a deep way that is an attitudinal way. And I often liken it to say, if somebody grew up in the UK, for example, from 0 to 10, mm-hmm. they would know things that even if I immigrated to the UK and I learned everything I possibly could, they would know things. They would know nursery rhymes. They would know, football players. They would know little things in their attitude. And that's really what the kids know. And
it's actually that kind of, it's the cultural knowledge that makes any language so difficult to really master, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the cultural, you put your finger on it very well. It's more of a cultural side than a knowledge of the facts. Certainly there are plenty of cases where the teachers know more about the facts of exactly what to do, mm-hmm. Or how to master a particular noun or application better. But they will never have the same attitude. Uh-huh. They'll never have the same comfort. They'll never have the same lack of fear that the young people have, because this was just part of their lives growing up.
Okay, thanks. A couple more questions. Marco in Italy, he says he read recently about distinction with kids that although they're tech comfy, they're not necessarily tech savvy. So that they're comfortable with technology, but perhaps, in pedagogical terms, maybe they're not making the best use of it. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's a valid, is our role to make them more tech savvy or to help them?
Sometimes it probably is. Certainly in understanding certain existing systems, we may know more than they do. Uh-huh. There's no kid, as I said in my talk, is born knowing Microsoft Word or knowing PowerPoint. They have to learn it in some way as well. And that might not be, they're certainly not focused on learning business type applications typically. So there are going to be areas where the kids know more, and especially attitudinal areas. And there are going to be areas where teachers may know more. Some teachers certainly do know more. And so I think it's often a case by case instance there. And if it's something really specific, it may very well be that part of what we do is help the kids understand some things that they don't know. And that's why we're adults, and that's why we're teachers. And I'm perfectly happy with that, as long as it's done with mutual respect.
Sure. And
we respect what they know that we don't know, and learn from them at the same time.
There's, I think, possibly 8 or 9 years ago now, that this adage of teachers, technology won't replace teachers, but teachers who use technology will replace those who don't. And that was a long time ago. As far as I can see, very little has changed in that respect. That teachers are still not engaging very well with technology. So why do you think, in other areas of life, in big business, they're very quick to adopt new technologies. Twitter's a great example. Why is education so slow compared to other areas? Why are we so slow at adopting technology?
I don't know that we totally are. I think that some of the stuff gets exaggerated. Twitter is not all that big, except among the people who really, really love it. But it's important and it's growing. Uh-huh. I think that and there is some truth to the adage that we tend to overestimate in the short term and underestimate the power in the long term. But having thought about that a lot, there is a particular thing that I think is going on, and that is that the link between technology and pedagogy. And what I mean by that is, if in the old pedagogy, which most people are using, which is the telling pedagogy, sage on the stage that you referred to, technology doesn't help. It hinders. It gets in the way. The most you can do is stand up there and show some pictures and show some videos, and that's trivial compared to what technology can do. If you are lecturing to a room full of kids with laptops and they're not using the laptops, they're going to be on Facebook. And they're going to be using them, as one professor said, as spitballs. So the point is that before you can take advantage of the technology, you have to change the pedagogy. And we haven't focused on that. We haven't focused on the pedagogy, on making the teachers comfortable with partnering and being the guide on the side as opposed to the sage on the stage. And until that happens, technology will not take off in the schools, but when it happens, everything will go really, really fast because the technology just enables the partnering pedagogy.
One of the big things, I think, in the last few years has been interactive whiteboards. I mean, teachers seem to have taken to those, presumably because they're a very familiar metaphor, if you like. How do you see interactive whiteboards? Do you think they are a help or a hindrance? Because they tend to push people into a certain type of pedagogy, which is very teacher-fronted.
Personally, I don't think we should let the teachers use the interactive whiteboards. I'm not saying we shouldn't have them, but if we have them, they should be the province of the students. The students should use them. The students should present with them. The students should figure out the most engaging and important ways to use these. Because just as you said, what happens is a teacher gets one of these and they show pictures and they show a video from YouTube, and they think, as one kid said, they make a PowerPoint and they think they're so awesome. But it's just like writing on the blackboard. On the other hand, for the price of 5 of these boards, you can buy a lot of other technology. You could buy a 3D printer. A 3D printer is something that would just open the eyes of kids because they can take their ideas and suddenly see them come out as really complex designs in 3 dimensions, just like real designers do in the world. You could invest that money in other ways. You could buy a lot of iPhones or iTouches. So we have to really look at what we do and make sure that we're not being obsolete before we even get started. And that lesson was learned by the colleges and universities in the U.S. who invested a lot of money in secure email systems, only to find that the kids had totally switched to instant messaging.
Thank you. I guess this thing of equipment and money and spending money carefully, my observation is I travel quite a lot for work all around the world. My observation has been that 90 to 95% of the budget goes on hardware and very little goes on training for teachers. So there's a question here from Christina in Italy. She says, what motivation can we find for big governments to provide teachers with training at this kind of level? Is that the key to normalization of technology in the class? Is training the key?
Well, I think training and development and professional development and all this stuff is important, but I don't think it should be about the technology. I think it should be about the pedagogy. And I think that if everybody made as their goal to have the bulk of their teachers, maybe we'll never get all of them, but as many as we can, move from being that sage on the stage, the controller and the disciplinarian and the teller, to being the partner and the guide and the helper as the kids teach themselves. If we could change that pedagogy, I think the technology would actually take care of itself.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that the technology really should be invisible, Andy Baxter, Portugal, he says, is digital native the same as analog illiterate? I.e., they have lost the knowledge of how things work as things have become complex.
Oh,
sorry, I'm throwing the last minute questions at you now.
Oh, they're all interesting questions, and people have come up with all sorts of ideas and metaphors, and I think they're all good. And it's really what works. We're really after understanding here, on the one hand, that there are distinctions, but the reason we're doing that underneath is to bring the people back together. So it's not calling people names, and I never meant to have it be used that way, but I hear from critics and other people that people will say, oh, you're a native, I can't teach you, or you're an immigrant, I can't talk to you. When I was hoping that people would say, well, I'm an immigrant, let's laugh at my accent, let's work together. I'm a native, I have a lot of things I could show you, let me show you. And that's why one of the things that I talk about a lot is mutual respect. And so any term that increases mutual respect and understanding, I'm for. Any term that decreases mutual respect and understanding, I think is problematic.
Okay, final question. This is from Heike in Germany. Hi Heike, we know each other. She says, will our children spend more time on YouTube than reading books? And I guess the subtext to that question is reading dying out? And if so, is that a bad thing?
Well, there's a short-term answer and a long-term answer, and there's also an answer depending on what you do in life. For what I think is happening is that the bulk of communication is shifting from being word-based to being image-based. So, or forms other than words or in additional words. It used to be that text was the primary way that everybody communicated other than when they spoke to each other. Now we have all these with YouTube that took off faster than anybody ever imagined, that it happens not just with individuals and kids talking to 6 people, it happens with Nobel Prize winners talking, going on TED Talks and Big Thing and talking to the world. It's become a real important way of communication. Does that mean books will die out? Maybe in some instances. People will not go to books for their information or their recreation. I think that's true. Now, there will always be a group of people, scholars and others, who will need books and will value books and will use them. So I don't think that that will totally disappear, just like nothing ever totally disappears. But relative to other things, I think reading and writing will eventually take a lower place, and that it will be possible to be, while maybe not at the top level of being a literate person, it will be very possible to be a well-functioning adult without necessarily knowing how to read or write at a very high level.
Okay, on behalf of everyone on the online community, I want to thank you very much for coming back and taking time out from the book. When can we, the book, see, obviously you don't believe books are going to disappear. When can we expect the book to be out?
I hope it will be out sometime this year. I'm going to finish it by May, and then we will see what the publishing process is. But if anybody has any interesting things that they would like to contribute in terms of examples of partnering, I'm very interested in hearing from those people. My email is mark@games2train.com. You can find it online at marcPrensky.com.
And also go through the website, yeah, marcPrensky.com.
marcPrensky.com. And please send me interesting things that you're doing or have found out don't work, and I will be happy to include as many of them as I can.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, it's my pleasure.